So we're now going to start talking actually about ARVs. And the first question is always how quickly we start. And to just remember, and this is also from our previous guideline, we try and get everybody onto treatment almost immediately, or at least within 7 days. And we really want to prioritize our pregnant women, our children under 5, and anybody with advanced HIV disease. But obviously, don't force your patient to start if they're not ready. But if the patient is ill, especially if they've got TB or a meningitis, we first have to sort that out before we can start ARVs. And this is the classic table that's been coming over from guideline to guideline for years. Most of it is still the same. With drug-sensitive TB, they still have this odd, oh, sorry, mistaken there, that CD4 over 2, oh, yeah, no, that is correct. If the CD4 is under 50, then you can start the ART in 2 weeks very safely. But you can delay for 8 weeks if the CD4 is over 50. I was curious that they still keep this in. This is quite controversial. Mainly from a morbidity point of view, you can easily wait 8 weeks before starting ARVs. Actually, in general, from a morbidity point of view, we can wait before we start ARVs. The reason why we initiate ARVs so urgently is very much from a prevention point of view. So we want to start protecting people from passing on the virus. And I think most of us feels a little bit nervous about waiting a whole 8 weeks for somebody who's now really well on their TB treatment before we're going to cover potential exposure to other people. So in practice, a lot of people will start before the 8 weeks, but you have an 8 weeks gap there before you need to start ARVs. For drug-resistant TB, you'll obviously start quicker. And then we all know about our neurological TB. So our TB meningitis, we need to wait 4 to 8 weeks, cryptococcal meningitis, 4 to 6 weeks. But this is sort of new. There was a circular and it's been different in different guidelines. But it's very clear now, if the patient's CRAG positive, you must always do an LP. If the LP is negative, you can start ART on the same day as what you start in your fluconazole. So you don't need to wait the 2 weeks that there was in the previous guideline. And then if they're acutely ill, if you're treating a pneumonia or a PJP, just wait 1 or 2 weeks until the patient is better before you start them on those ARVs. So in terms of our baseline assessment, and these I'm going to do quickly, this is not much has changed here. We know that we have to obviously do our WHO stage in our patients. We obviously need to screen for TB. So very important, we're now doing a gene expert at baseline for every single patient. And our nutritional status, we know all about. This is not just about whether they are very underweight, but also as we're seeing screening patients earlier and earlier as part of our cardiovascular risk screening, we're going to do our waist circumferences. Remember, check our cholesterols when indicated. And we want to look for other non-communicable diseases. Very important, looking for mental health issues and substance abuse issues, and screenings for STI and pregnancy. For our children, very similar, also just very important to look for the danger signs as outlined in our IMCI. We want to plot, obviously, our child on all our different charts. And then to screen, always to look for our children for neurodevelopmental and in terms of are they reaching all their milestones. Older children really to be aware of depression. And we see sometimes we forget our kids with epilepsy, they might be on other epileptic treatment. And to just make sure we be careful about those possible drug interactions. Baseline investigations is all very similar, but I want to highlight this. This is actually from the previous guideline, but I'm thinking, and I don't think reflex screening is happening in all our labs yet, but a CRAG at the moment is recommended if the CD4 is under 200. So some labs might still do it if the CD4 is under 100. We can actually chat about that in the end, whether we're already seeing that if the CRAG is under. So if your patient's coming back and the CD4 is 140 and they haven't done a CRAG, you should actually be taking another blood test and just sending it for a CRAG. We obviously always do our creatinines, we do our HB. And important, if it obviously is low, then you do your full blood count and you manage accordingly. In our children under 5 years, it's quite common, just treat with iron supplements and deworm before you start investigating. We always do our hepatitis B serum antigens and our cervical screening. Nothing much has changed there for our HIV positive ladies every 3 years. So this is important. This is from the old guideline. And interestingly, I don't think we're necessarily always that good at it, but everybody should be having a sputum gene expert at baseline. So as part of your workup, as part of your blood test, we send a gene expert, even if they're asymptomatic. This is also recommended for our children under 10 years, but it's not essential. And you don't have to wait for the results before you start the ARVs. So if the patient doesn't have any TB symptoms, you'll still start your ARVs, but you send that gene expert at the start. So if you've got a gene expert negative patient and the patient's got TB symptoms, we obviously want to make sure the patient doesn't have TB before we start those ARVs. And then just a quick reminder on urim lamb. So I think most of you hopefully know this, but all of your admitted patients actually qualify for urinary lamb if they're HIV positive. Doesn't matter what their CD4 count is. If they're coming in as an outpatient and they've got TB symptoms with HIV, then as somebody with a CD4 count of less than 200, you can do your urinary lamb as well, but then they also need to have symptoms. I'm not going to go through these in detail. We've been covering this a lot before in the past, but very important to investigate quickly and efficiently to check for TB before we start on those ARVs. We also need to assess our renal function. This table hasn't changed, which is also interesting because actually we don't really use the MDRD formula anymore. I think it's a bit of a cut and paste thing. Most of us will use the CKD EPI formula. It's slightly better. But just remember that these formulas are useful in people over 16 years of age. So as soon as they're under 16 years of age, you want to use a different formula. And you can notice that our cutoff for tenofovir use is much higher in our adolescents than they are for our adults. Pregnant women, remember, we can't do the formulas, and we actually use an absolute value of the creatinine of less than 85. So this has been added actually to the guideline. It's from the HIV Clinician Society guideline. It's a lovely algorithm to do with creatinine that goes up soon after you starting the patient on ARVs. So dolutegravir has got the interesting phenomenon that it actually affects the secretion of creatinine and doesn't cause any damage. It's just a physiological effect. And so your creatinine levels goes up slightly in the first sort of few months, and then will sort of stay at that new level. So this is not a need. We do not need to stop dolutegravir because of this. And so there's a nice tight table that we don't have to spend a lot of time on, but that you need to be aware of. So if you've got a patient, you've got your baseline creatinine, you do your 3 months creatinine and it's increased, then you want to go through this algorithm to see how much has that increase be. And you can see if it's raised less than 20 micromoles per liter, then we're not worried at all. If it's between 20 and 30, between 20 and 30, we'll just check again in a month. But obviously, if your GFR goes under 50, for example, then we need to investigate and figure out what's going on. So just be aware of the algorithm. This doesn't happen very frequently, so it's something to refer to if you see a patient with that increase in creatinine on dolutegravir. So if we talk about prophylaxis, there's a few significant changes that's coming to here. Cotrimoxazole, we already noticed in the previous guideline. I think there was already updates in the HIV Clinician Society was guideline was different. We're still using our CD4 of 200 in people over 5 as our threshold, and for children under 5, a threshold of CD4 of 25%. But important, the staging has shifted. So we're no longer having to give Bactrim to people who are stage 2. So it's only if there's WHO stage 3 or 4 that we would actually use the Bactrim. And you can stop your cotrimoxazole as soon as the CD4 count is over 200 after 1 reading. You don't need the 2 readings, but that's already from quite some time ago. In children who's at PJP, we would actually keep them on that cotrimoxazole until they're 5 years of age. But the interesting changes has been in the TB preventative therapy, small changes, but quite significant. So importantly, as always, screen all your patients, obviously, for TB. Children, we don't need an X-ray or anything like that. If they don't have symptoms, we can start them on their TPT and just exclude things like liver disease and INH hypersensitivity. So in adults, this is still exactly as we've always done it. So any adult or adolescent that's over the ages of 15, when we diagnose them with HIV, we're going to start them on IPT on the same day. We're going to give them INH for 12 months together with their pyridoxine. There is a new preparation out there, the rifapentin INH. There's some lovely guidelines that explains all of that, but we can't use rifapentin INH unless the viral load is suppressed. So it's actually not an option for patients that you're newly starting on ARVs and INH, but might be an option in somebody where you didn't use your IPT for some reason at the beginning. And then this is a weekly preparation for 3 months, which is very convenient, but you can only do that once their viral loads are actually suppressed. So INH for 12 months for everybody over 15, very easy. This change, I only picked up this morning when I went back to the table. It's made me nervous that I'm missing other things. So we used to have a whole thing in terms of the weight and how long you're given the IPT. They've simplified this for children under the ages of 15. And so what the guideline now says is if you're over 14 weeks old, so babies from 3 months and up, when they first get diagnosed with HIV, or if they've had any significant exposure to TB, so this is anybody under the age of 15, then they're going to get that INH 10 milligrams per kilograms for 6 months. So the difference here is they used to have a thing that if you're over 25 kilograms and you're going to give it for a year, that's all been taken out. So very simply, under 15 years old, 6 months of INH, any exposure, any new child newly diagnosed with HIV, and remember to add your pyridoxines. This is also new and very important because we've had various circulars, debates, discussions. They've now made a decision in terms of what we do with pregnant women. So we know our pregnant women are very much at risk if they get TB in pregnancy. It puts the babies at risk. But we also know that INH has potential risks. So it's been this weighing up. So the recommendation is now a CD4 cutoff of 200. So that's changed. Or if they're stage 3 or 4, and then or have advanced HIV disease, and then you will give them INH 300 milligrams a day for the 12 months. And that's, yeah, the rifapentin, etc., is not an option in our pregnant women. So please note this change. Great. So let's talk about ART initiation and actually look at